Just to introduce Linda, with her husband Chris, who was next to you, but who is that? They're long-time volunteers at our BBAP reserve, a number of our BBAP reserves, and both are very serious environmental activists, very concerned about what's happening. And from Linda's point of view, Bumblebees show just how serious things are in the UK. I'll let her say more.
Mick, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come along and talk about bumblebees today. We record for the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, and what I'm going to do is just give a very, very quick explanation of what a bee walk is. It's a standardised monitoring scheme across the UK. It's been a citizen science project since about 2010. And what we're doing as bee walkers is collecting data on the species distribution and the abundance of bumblebees across the UK. And as volunteers for the Trust, we walk a fixed route of transit every month between March and October, and we have a recording box. So the recording box is 2 metres either side, 4 metres in front, 2 metres round to get height a little bit more, and we're strictly recording the bumblebees that we see in that box. And what we're doing is we're noting the species and the cast seen, so that's whether it's a queen, a worker or a male. And we're also noting the behaviour of the bumblebee. Most commonly, what flower is it nectaring on? And then the other thing we're noting is honeybees. And that may seem a little bit strange to you, but I'm going to come back to that in a moment. And sometimes it does mean netting your bumblebee, just to ascertain exactly what you've got. So the records from our recording box are uploaded onto the Bee Walk website, and this enables the Bumblebee Conservation Trust to do some really good, thorough in-house research, and they publish their annual population trends, early warning signs of species decline, and also population changes that may be the result of change of land use or climate change. And then eventually all the data gets uploaded onto the National Biodiversity Network. And there are about 800 bee walkers in the UK doing about 1,000 transects. And the Bumblebee Conservation Trust has an excellent team to offer training, support and guidance, and to ensure surveys are accurate and effective, and that the data is of the highest possible quality. Training can be in person or online. There's an excellent YouTube channel. So it really is thorough. And that is a very, very quick overview of what a bee walk is. And Chris and I, we do 2 bee walks in Buckinghamshire, but it's the one at Dancer's End, the one that we've got the most data on, the one we've done since 2016, that I'm going to talk about now. And for those of you who don't know Dancer's End, the cemetery, but it's a lovely reserve. It's a mixed habitat nature reserve in sheltered Chiltern Valleys. And it's been a nature reserve since the 1940s. And our transect there is 1.3 kilometres long. It includes orchard, calcareous grassland, woodland rides. And it really is a wonderful reserve, with Nick here being an excellent warden for many more years than any of us can remember, but want to remember. But all in all, the thing about Dancer's End is it's a lovely place to be a bumblebee. And we've managed to record a good number of species there. So 11 species, 7 social, 4 kleptoparasitic. Currently in the UK, 22 species are recorded. But of course, some of those 22 species are very specific to either upland or heathland, so you wouldn't expect to find them at Dancer's End. So, of the 7 social, these are they. Pretty much what you would expect from habitat at Dancer's End. There are a couple of species we have not found that the habitat, I think, would support. One is the red-shanked carder-bee, and that's Bombus ruderatus. And the second is the large garden bumblebee, Bombus ruderatus. We would love to find them, but sadly, we haven't. And then the 4 kleptoparasitics, they're the usual suspects considering the host bumblebee. Bartlett's cuckoo bee, the host is the garden bumblebee, which we do find at Dancer's End. It may be there, we haven't found it. So this is my first graph. It shows the species, the number of species we found year on year. And minor variability is to be expected. You know, a bee walk is a very, very, how can I put it, crude tool for recording. Your transect is very limited by your 4 metre square. If there's a bumblebee nest near to your walking one year, but not the next, it's going to change your records. But there is an erosion of species diversity going on here, as I think you can see. I spoke about recording honeybees when we were talking earlier, and there is a big dip there in 2019, and in 2018, the previous year to the dip, we were recording hundreds and hundreds of honeybees on our transect, and it's our belief that that number of honeybees had a huge impact on the species we recorded the following year. And it's just worth looking at the impact of honeybees on bumblebees and on solitary bees for that matter. And I've just put up a couple of quotes there from Professor Dave Paulson's book, just for you to read. The problem with honeybees is that they dominate the floral resources over a very large area. There are thousands in a hive. And the problem is our short-tongued bumblebees cannot compete. The longer-tongued species of bumblebees, such as the garden bumblebee and the common carder, they can switch to tubular flowers, and tubular flowers may not be their preferred forage, but they can switch, and they do fare a little bit better. The other thing about honeybees is that there's about 20 known viruses that are carried by them, and 2 of those have been found in the bumblebee population, and one of them is deformed wing virus, and the other is slow bee paralysis. The second graph is showing the abundance, the total number of bumblebees found year on year at Dancer's End. And I think you will agree with me that this is an extremely alarming decline on a long established and well managed nature reserve. The issue is that this is not confined to Dancer's End. There are other bee walkers in other parts of the UK with very, very similar results. 2018 was our honeybee year, so you can see that the honeybees, that the bumblebees were avoiding parts of the transect we were on. 2024 was absolutely disastrous. I've just listed 3 of the species there who were most affected in 2024. These are bumblebees that come out a little bit later in the year, and it's the poor spring and early summer weather had a huge impact on many species at the most vulnerable time, the colony establishment stage. But the truth is, in the last 80 years, our bumblebee numbers in the UK have crashed. There are many reasons why this has happened. The most prevalent one is the fact that we've lost our wildflower meadows, over 90%. And this has had a devastating impact on forage and nesting sites. Modern farming methods with pesticides and fertilisers further degrade habitat available to bumblebees, and increased urbanisation means we've lost connectivity. I don't have to explain neonics, they've been awful. I've spoken already about honeybees and the pathogens that they transmit to bumbles. But there's also the commercial bumblebee colonies that farmers in polytunnels use, and they too transmit pathogens to our native bumblebees. And the thing about bumblebees is that they and their nests do not do well in temperatures over about 27 degrees C. And the elephant in the room is climate change. In the Med, populations of bumblebees are moving north rapidly. There is evidence that our UK populations are moving north as well. And it's not just the increased temperatures. You know, we have extensive flooding. Somerset lost a lot of their hibernating queens. I think it was the year before last. And then we have periods of drought, which reduce nectar and the forage for bumblebees. So what can we do to help? Well, restore flower-rich and species-rich grassland. And I must admit, I know Mick laughs at this, but I love tree popping. You know that getting out the hawthorn scrub or the willow scrub or whatever, restoring our grasslands if we can. And I think all 3 nature reserves that I volunteer on, clearing scrub is one of the big things we do. But yeah, it's important. Bumblebees love big areas of forage. They really do. Not patches, they love big areas. And ensure good foraging from early in the year to late. So leave those willow trees. Sorry, Mick, don't cut that down. Our grassy field margins. Yeah. Bumblebees need good nesting sites. They also need good sites for overwintering. And don't use those pesticides or herbicides. And please do not put honeybees hives on precious sites. And connecting wildlife corridors, the extension fields at Dancer's End, some of the things that Bee Bout are doing in the Upper Ray area, purchasing parcels of land to give some connectivity. All this is very, very important. And I think the other thing is to educate, talk with your neighbours, because you will be doing everything right on your patch. But if your neighbour is doing all the wrong things that we previously looked at, it rather nullifies what you're doing. Because we all know that the effects of pesticides and fertilisers do not remain at their point of application. I'm going to end by putting up a couple of quotes here from Dr. Richard Conant, who's the science manager at Bumblebee Conservation Trust. This was an interview he did this year. We've got smaller, weaker populations of a lot of bumblebees because of long-term habitat changes. We know that bumblebees were struggling anyway, and smaller, weaker populations are less able to respond to changes. They don't have that resilience. And I think this is what our data from Dancer's End is showing. Our species diversity has declined a little, but our numbers have crashed. And this is what we've got. We've got smaller, weaker populations on that site and in many, many sites across the UK. So Richard Common goes on to say, the key thing is having big populations, because big populations are resilient populations. And we really do have to do everything in our power to conserve these really wonderful and iconic pollinators. Thank you very, very much for listening. If you haven't seen our Bumblebee Conservation Trust display table, please come and have a look and take some leaflets. If you feel you can support us by membership or take on a bee walk, then please come and talk to myself or to Chris. And if you are already recording bumblebees on iRecord or through Fit Counts, then thank you very much for doing so.